They say thunder is just the sky expressing something too powerful to remain silent. If that were true, then maybe Chica's silence was thunder too. Not the kind that boomed with sound, but the kind that shattered everything from the inside out. The kind that lived behind her eyes. She stood barefoot in the corridor of her late father's house in Enugu, one hand on the dusty doorframe, the other clenched at her side like she was holding on to the last piece of herself. The rain outside beat down like a warning. The clouds gathered in thick spirals above her head, dark and swollen, like they knew. Like they had seen her tear herself in half for love. And now, they came to mourn it with her. Inside the house, everything smelled of old paper and eucalyptus balm. The remnants of a man who believed in routine, discipline, and never letting anyone see you cry. Chika had broken all three, especially with Kene. She wasn't supposed to fall in love with her therapist. She wasn't supposed to open that locked room inside her and let someone see the mess. But Kene, he made the boundaries feel like suggestions, not rules, not sacred lines. And now, here she was, 2 years after cutting him off, back in her hometown, because the only parent she had left had slipped quietly into the next life, and the will demanded her presence. But it wasn't the will that had cracked her. It was the voice message from Kene last night. Chika, I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything, but I need 10 minutes, please. 10 minutes. What do you do when the person who crossed your boundaries still has access to the door? You pray the storm outside drowns out the storm inside. The house had only 2 chairs worth sitting on. Chika pulled one near the window and watched the rain trace silver scars down the glass. Her hand trembled when she reached into her coat pocket. The tiny leather notebook. The one Keen gave her on her birthday. The one he said was for writing the things you're not ready to say. It was mostly empty, except for one page. Just because someone knows how to hold you doesn't mean they know how to keep you safe. She'd written it the night she walked out of his life, barefoot, shaking, crying, and refusing to look back. She had learned that day that love without boundaries is like thunder with no lightning, all sound, no clarity. It was almost 4 p.m. when he showed up. Keen always smelled like rain, even on sunny days. Maybe it was the mint in his cologne. Maybe it was just who he was, always bringing a storm into her life without meaning to. He didn't knock at first, just stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the floor, the wall, the memories. When their eyes met, something inside her buckled. Not like love, like grief. "Hi," he said. She didn't respond. He stepped inside anyway. Boundaries. Broken again. They sat across from each other at the dining table. No food, no tea, just silence and a pile of unspoken things between them. "I shouldn't be here," he said. "I know that. But when I heard about your dad, I couldn't not come." She stared at him. He continued, softer. "You haven't returned my messages for almost 2 years. Because you were never supposed to send them," she said, finally. He nodded, guilt painting his face. "I know. I crossed the line. I became someone I shouldn't have. I blurred things. I hurt you." Chika's hands were shaking again. She curled them under the table. "You didn't just blur things. You made me believe that safety and connection were the same thing." Keen's breath caught in his throat. I thought I was helping. You were helping. And then you weren't. Then you were just someone else who thought loving me meant breaking me open to see how deep the wounds went." The thunder outside cracked. This time, they both flinched. There's a pain that feels like betrayal and therapy at the same time. When someone sees your soul so clearly that you forget to protect it. That was Keen. He had seen her childhood wounds, her deep ache for validation, her struggle with perfection. And instead of backing away, he leaned in. Too close, so close that she forgot which words were hers and which were his. So close that she mistook his concern for intimacy. So close she forgot the boundary. And when she tried to rebuild the wall, he tried to break it down. With kindness, with tears, with that voice that made even her trauma feel seen. Why now? She asked, voice barely audible over the rain. Keen exhaled slowly. Because I'm in therapy now too. And every week, I talk about the one person I lost because I didn't understand what a boundary was. He looked up at her. You. Chika closed her eyes. It wasn't fair. How he still knew the perfect words to say. You know what hurts? She said. It's not that you crossed the line. It's that you knew exactly where the line was, and stepped over it anyway. Silence. I loved you, Chika. No, she said, opening her eyes. You needed me, and I mistook that for love. He winced. But love doesn't make a person feel like a project. It doesn't keep asking for just one more session when the room is already full of ghosts. It doesn't say, I'm helping, while chipping away at someone's dignity. I never meant. I know, she cut in. But meaning well doesn't unbreak someone. Outside, thunder rolled again, louder, closer. Inside, the table was still. The space between them, thick with memories and regret. Then she stood. He stood too. Don't, she said. He paused. I wasn't going to touch you. She nodded. I know, but some things don't require touch to hurt. He stepped back. She picked up the leather notebook from the table and held it out. I kept it, she said. He took it slowly, hands trembling. Thank you. I don't need it anymore, she replied. She wasn't sure if she meant the notebook or the memory, probably both. As Kine reached the door, he turned back. Chika, do you think you'll ever forgive me? She didn't answer right away. Then, softly, I already have. But forgiveness isn't always followed by reunion. Sometimes it's followed by release. He nodded, tears forming. I'm glad you're finding healing, she said. But I need mine too. And it begins with not letting the past keep knocking on my door. The door opened. The thunder outside welcomed him. After Kenny left, the house felt louder than before, like it was breathing. Chika didn't move for a long time. She just stood by the door, her fingers resting on the brass handle like they were trying to hold time in place. But time is the one guest that never asks permission to move on. The sky had calmed. A hush followed the storm, the kind that came only after something sacred had been broken and reassembled in a different shape. She turned away from the door and faced the house again. It was a shell, really. Her childhood lived in the bones of it. Memories scattered like forgotten letters across rooms she hadn't stepped into for years. The walls still bore pencil marks from when she and her brother tried to measure who was taller. The kitchen still had the scorch mark from the time she nearly set the stew on fire. And in the living room, right beside the aging couch, was her mother's old diary, now sealed in a worn shoebox. That room, that couch, that diary, everything in this house had a memory. Everything whispered her name differently. She climbed the stairs slowly, barefoot still, as though wearing shoes would be too loud for the sacred grief she carried. The bedroom smelled like mothballs and time. She sat on the bed and opened her phone. No new messages. Good. Bad. She wasn't sure which anymore. She scrolled anyway. Old pictures, blurry videos, screenshots of things she never had the courage to say out loud. Then she found it. the voice memo she never sent. Kine, I loved the way you said my name, but I hated the way I forgot how to say it myself when I was with you. I don't think you're evil. I think you're broken in places that made my broken feel seen. But broken isn't love. It's trauma bonding, and I won't keep confusing the two. She hit play. Just once. Her own voice sounded like someone else's. Younger, more unsure, like she was learning to stand and apologize at the same time. She didn't cry, not yet, but her heart ached like it was being peeled open with kindness. Slow, precise, painful. That night, she couldn't sleep. Grief has a way of crawling into your throat when the house is too quiet. So she wrapped herself in her father's old Ankara robe and walked to the veranda. The moon was full, heavy, watching. She sat on the edge of the steps and stared at the sky. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered to no one. And yet, the answer came, not from heaven, not from memory, but from within. Live with the thunder until you no longer fear its sound. That's what her therapist used to say. The one before Kine. The one who didn't blur the lines. The one who told her that healing sometimes sounds like a storm before it sounds like a song. She hadn't understood it then. She was starting to now. The next morning, the lawyer came. An elderly woman named Madame Agu. Stern but kind. The kind of presence that didn't shrink when pain entered the room. They sat in the dining room, the morning light slicing across the table like golden truth. I won't waste your time, Miss Chika, she said. Your father's will was simple. He left you the house, the land, and... She paused. The recordings. Chika blinked. Recordings? Madame Agu handed her a small box. Inside, a stack of old cassette tapes, labeled in her father's handwriting. For Chika. One day, you'll need to hear the things I never said. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the first one. Do you have something to play this on? Madame Agu asked gently. Chika shook her head. I'll send someone. And with that, the woman left, as quietly as she had come, like thunder slipping back into the clouds. Later that evening, after the tape recorder arrived, Chika sat alone in the living room. She stared at the dusty cassette in her hand. Her father's voice, a man who raised her with strength, but rarely with softness, was inside this tiny, black rectangle. She wasn't sure she was ready, but she pressed play anyway. Chika, my daughter, if you're hearing this, then I am already gone, and the silence between us has lasted too long. Her breath caught. I didn't know how to father a daughter who cried. I only knew how to father a daughter who performed, who excelled, who hid her pain because I taught her to. A tear slid down her cheek. I saw how your light dimmed every time I praised your grades, but not your heart. And I'm sorry. I didn't know how to say, I love you when you're weak. But I did. I do. She paused the tape, sobbing. Not because of the words, but because she had waited her whole life to hear them. And now, they arrived. Late, fragile, real. The kind of thunder that heals instead of breaks. For the next 3 days, Chika listened to one tape each night. Each one peeled back a layer of her father's humanity. His regrets, his love, his confusion. He had grown up in silence too. Learned to parent with rules, not tenderness. And though he never knew how to show it, he had loved her the only way he knew. By preparing her to survive storms, even if it meant becoming one. By the final tape, Chika felt something new. Not forgiveness, not yet, but softness, towards him, towards herself. She called her brother Nonso on the 4th day. They hadn't spoken since the funeral. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? I listened to his tapes, she said. Silence. Then, yeah? He said he was proud of me. Not for what I achieved, just for being me. A breath. That's good to hear. I think he wanted to say more when he was alive. I think we all did, Nonso said. But saying things out loud isn't easy when you're raised to believe silence is strength. Chika laughed. It was short, broken, beautiful. Come visit the house, she said. It's too loud with just one person healing in it. That night, she stood outside again, barefoot. The thunder had not returned, but the air still carried its scent. She looked up at the sky and whispered, I forgive you. She didn't mean Keen, not this time. She meant her father and herself, for all the times they chose silence when they should have chosen vulnerability. Boundaries had been her salvation. But grace was her resurrection. When morning came, she opened the notebook again. She began to write. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges with tolls. You get to choose who crosses and what the cost will be. I do not exist for anyone's healing but my own. I can love deeply and still walk away. That is not betrayal. That is sacred self-respect. And then, thunder doesn't apologize for its volume. Neither will I. The day Nonso arrived, the rain was soft, almost apologetic. Chika stood at the edge of the driveway, arms crossed, watching his Uber crawl through the narrow street like it was afraid of arriving. He stepped out in jeans and a plain black tee, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and that same weary smile he used to wear after every argument with their father. They hugged, stiff at first, then warmer. Familiar. Family. Place looks the same, Nonso said, stepping inside. It feels different now, she replied, like it knows he's gone. He looked around and nodded. Smells like balm and memories. He smiled. Exactly. Over lunch, plain rice, grilled fish, and too much pepper. They talked about everything and nothing. Childhood mischief. Their late mother's humming. That time, Chika painted the bathroom walls because she thought yellow was a happy color. Then the conversation turned. I saw Kine, Chika said softly. Nonso blinked. When? 3 days ago. He put his fork down slowly. Why? He asked for 10 minutes. And you gave it to him? Yes. Nonso sighed. You're braver than me. I'd have slammed the door in his face. I wanted to, she said. But I also wanted closure. Did you get it? Chika took a long breath. I got something. Not closure, but clarity. I saw how far I've come. Nonso studied her face, then nodded. Boundaries aren't just for others, you know, he said. They're also how we prove to ourselves that we're no longer the same person. That night, they lit candles and played one last tape from their father. It was different. Not about regrets, not about discipline, but about her. Chika, I watched you become a woman who walks into fire for others. But now, I pray you learn to walk out of fire for yourself. You were never made to burn forever. Some flames are meant to be left behind. Nonso's eyes shimmered. Chika wept. And in that moment, something in the house changed. The air shifted, as though grief had finally unclenched its fist and allowed healing to take its seat at the table. The next morning, she did something she never thought she would. She called Keen, not to rebuild, not to rekindle, but to return something. Hi, he said, voice cautious. I have your notebook, she replied. There's something I wrote in it. I think you should read it. Then, I'll be done. Silence. Then, I'll come by, if that's okay. Tomorrow, she said. 1 hour, nothing more. Boundaries, spoken, clear, sacred. When Keen arrived, she didn't let him step into the house. They sat outside, on the front porch, separated by a clay flower pot between them. She handed him the notebook. He opened it, read. His throat tightened. She could see it. Then he looked up. I don't know how to undo what I broke, he said. You can't, she replied. And you don't have to. That's not your job anymore. He looked down. Did you love me? She smiled. I loved what I thought we had. I loved the version of you who saw me. But not the version who didn't know what to do with what he saw. He exhaled. That's fair. I'm not angry anymore, she said. But I'm not available either. That one made him flinch. And that's when she knew. She was healed. Because once upon a time, his sadness would have pulled her back in like a tide. Now, it only made her stand taller. I hope you heal too, she said, standing. And then, gently but firmly, she walked back inside and closed the door. It didn't thunder that night. Instead, the stars came out. Bold, unbothered, brilliant. She sat on the couch with a cup of tea, her head on Nonso's shoulder, their shared silence no longer haunted, but holy. In her journal, she wrote, When you survive emotional warfare, you don't just become strong, you become precise. With your love, with your yes, with your silence. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are kindness to your future self. The storm didn't take me. It introduced me to the version of me who refuses to drown again. The first Sunday after everything, Chika went to church for the first time in nearly a year. She didn't go for faith. She went for quiet. She sat in the back row, next to a cracked window, wearing an oversized sweater that smelled like lavender. The service was already halfway through. The choir was finishing their last song, and the pastor stood slowly, gripping the pulpit like it had secrets only he understood. Chika wasn't listening at first, but then she heard him say, Some of you are still carrying people who would have let you drown if the roles were reversed. Her breath caught. He continued, You think forgiveness means keeping the door open. But sometimes forgiveness is locking it, sealing it with prayer, and walking away barefoot into your peace. She closed her eyes. That was her. Walking barefoot into her peace, into her own thunder. After service, she lingered at the old fig tree in front of the church. Children ran past, shouting, their laughter bouncing off the old stone building like drums. She reached into her purse and pulled out the final tape her father recorded, the one labeled simply, Chika, Light. She played it under the tree. I named you after Light because I knew darkness would try to find you. I didn't know how to protect you from it. I didn't know how to give you the tenderness your mother had. But I did know you were always meant to shine, not for anyone else, but for you. She let the tears fall silently this time. No resistance, no shame, just truth. When thunder rolls, some run. But you, Chika, you face it. You walk into the storm, barefoot, spine straight, hands steady. Because you were made in the image of the woman who never feared rain, and the man who wished he could be more than silence. You are not your pain. You are the fire that survived it. She didn't realize she was crying until a small hand touched her elbow. A little girl stood beside her, holding a white flower. You look sad, the girl said. I'm not, Chika replied. I'm just remembering something important. The girl nodded. You can have this. She handed Chika the flower and skipped off. And for the first time in a long time, Chika smiled and felt it reach her chest. When she got home, Nonso was packing. You're leaving? He nodded. I think we've buried what needed to be buried. She helped him zip the bag. Are we okay? She asked. We're more than okay, he said. We're free. And he kissed her forehead, like a brother should, and walked away without looking back. That night, Chika lit a single candle in the center of the living room. She turned off all the lights. No noise, No screens, no distractions, just her and the flame. And the silence that once scared her but now felt like home. She thought of her past, the versions of her that bled just to keep others warm. The girl who mistook validation for love. The woman who thought boundaries were too sharp to be holy. And she wept for her. Not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to let herself feel everything she once numbed. In the morning, she opened the notebook again. This time, she didn't write pain. She wrote power. I no longer shrink myself to fit into spaces that cannot hold my fullness. My heart is not a therapy center. I am not here to be understood by those who refuse to understand themselves. Healing did not make me perfect. It made me honest. And finally, I do not chase closure anymore. I become it. Then she packed a small bag, boarded a bus to Lagos, and checked into a quiet guest house near the water. She needed this trip, not to run, but to honor the thunder that carried her this far. In Lagos, the air was heavy with ocean salt and promise. She sat by the shoreline every morning, journal in hand, feet buried in the wet sand, letting waves teach her what softness felt like again. One afternoon, a man sat near her, not close, not intrusive, just there. After a while, he said, "You don't talk much." She looked at him, amused. "I've said too much in my life. I'm learning to be selective." He smiled. "That's wisdom." They didn't exchange names. Didn't need to. She wasn't there to be known. She was there to know herself again. On the last night of her trip, the sky cracked open in a violent, beautiful storm. She stood at the window of her guest room, watching the lightning dance over the sea. She whispered, "I'm not afraid of you anymore." Not to the storm, to herself, to the part of her that once thought survival meant silence. She touched the glass, let the thunder echo through her rib cage, and she whispered again, "Thank you for breaking me. You had to, so I could build again." When Chika returned to Enugu, the house didn't greet her like it used to. It bowed. It made space. She stepped inside, and the air, for the first time, didn't feel haunted. The dust had settled. The tapes had been played. The past had been heard and laid to rest. She didn't unpack. Instead, she brewed a cup of tea, sat by the window, and looked at the mango tree in the yard. Its branches were full, heavy with fruit. Her father had planted it. She remembered him saying, "It won't bear much the first few years, but one day it'll surprise you." She smiled. He had no idea he was describing her. The next morning, she opened her phone and deleted the thread with Keen. All of it. The texts, the voice notes, the unsent drafts. Not in anger, in peace. Because you don't hold on to ashes when you're planting something new. She posted a quote on her page, no caption. "Some storms come to break you, others come to baptize you. Know the difference." People started commenting almost immediately, but Chika didn't read them. She was done living for echoes. She decided to turn the house into a retreat. Not for therapy, not for others, for herself. And maybe, someday, for women like her. The ones who had been strong for too long, who forgot what softness sounded like, who only ever cried in bathrooms and prayer closets. She painted the living room a new color, a warm sienna. She bought floor pillows, hung soft curtains, and filled the corners with plants that needed light just like she did. Every wall now held truth. Every corner was stitched with intention. The house, like her, had been redefined by thunder, not destroyed by it. One afternoon, while rearranging her bookshelf, she found the old photo album. The one from when she was 10. Before the ache began. Before the performance of perfection. She flipped through slowly. And there she was. Little Chica. Wild-haired, gap-toothed, laughing with abandon. She pressed her fingers to the photo and whispered, "I found you again." And in that moment, it was as if the universe paused to applaud her return. Weeks passed. The storms stopped. The air changed. One evening, she sat outside, wrapped in a shawl, watching the horizon burn with sunset. Her heart was quiet. Her soul no longer screamed. It just hummed, like a song without lyrics, full of peace. She thought of Ken again. But this time, he wasn't a wound. He was a page, turned, complete. She didn't hate him. She just didn't carry him anymore. That's the thing about boundaries. They're not fences. They're doors. And you get to decide who you let through, who you love from a distance, and who you leave outside to grow without you. Later that night, she journaled for the last time in the notebook. On the final page, she wrote, "There's a kind of thunder that lives in the chest of a woman who finally says, 'Enough.' I was not born to fix broken men who make homes in my softness. I will not bleed for those who will not bandage themselves. I love myself now, in full, in fragments, in fire, in freedom." Then she signed her name. Not Chica, daughter of grief. Not Chica, survivor. Just Chica. Light, unapologetic, whole. That same night, she received a voice message from someone unexpected. Not Kani, not Nonso, a woman she didn't know. "Hi, I hope this isn't strange. I came across your quote online. I'm in therapy now. I left someone who kept crossing lines I didn't know I could draw. Thank you for your words. They gave me courage. I just wanted you to know." Chica didn't respond. She didn't have to. The thunder in her had spoken, and it was already making music in someone else's storm. Days of Thunder was never about rain. It was about resurrection. It was never about heartbreak. It was about holy reclamation.